The rain fell in steady sheets over Willow Creek, Vermont, turning the gravel driveway into a shallow mirror of gray sky. Ethan Brooks stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing a chipped mug that read Times Homestitched in Emma's careful fourth-grade stitching. The sound of tires crunching outside made him pause. He dried his hands on a dish towel and opened the door. Clare Whitmore stood on the porch steps, rain darkening the shoulders of her winter cream trench coat. Her hair was pinned back neatly, but a few strands had escaped and clung to her cheek. She looked exactly like the girl he'd known 20 years ago, yet entirely different. Poised, unreadable, carrying the quiet authority of someone who commanded boardrooms. "Ethan," she said, voice level and unhurried. "Clare." He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. No question in it, just acknowledgement. She took one step closer, rain dripping from the porch roof behind her like a slow exhale. "You promised me a house by the river. Does that promise still stand?" He studied her for a long moment, the way she held herself, as if the years hadn't softened her edges but sharpened them. "Come up on the porch," he said. "I'm not inviting you in yet." They sat on the weathered wooden chairs, the river murmuring beyond the trees. Rain pattered on the roof like distant applause. Clare spoke first. "I'm the CEO of Whitmore Langford Development now. We've been in acquisition talks for properties along the Silverwood River corridor for 14 months. Your land is in the planning zone." Ethan's jaw tightened. "So that's what this is. That's part of what it is." She looked toward the tree line where mist clung to the pines. "The project's $220 million. Mixed-use resort, riverfront access, sustainable certification, hospitality wing. Your parcel is central." "And the other part?" Clare met his eyes. "I don't know yet." He asked if she'd known about the project before coming back. She admitted both. She'd returned because of it, and it had existed before she took the helm. She was staying at the Millbrook Inn, she said, as if that detail mattered. From inside, Emma's voice called, "Dad, potatoes are boiling over." Ethan stood. "Dinner's almost ready. You can stay out here or leave. Your choice." Clare stayed. 2 days later, she returned with a binder thick as a brick and a rolled survey map. This time, Emma answered the door. The 11-year-old tilted her head, assessing the visitor with the same quiet curiosity she used on blueprints. "You're the lady from the rain," Emma said. "Dad said you came back." Clare smiled faintly. "I did. I'm Clare." Emma stepped aside. "Come in. Dad's in the kitchen." At the table, Clare unrolled the map. Emma traced the winding blue line of the Silverwood with one finger. "Is this the river?" "Yes, and this," Clare pointed to a shaded area, "is the development zone." Emma's eyes narrowed at the rendering of sleek condos and trails. "Your proportions are off here. The north wing is too heavy. It'll shadow the eastern access all afternoon." Ethan, stirring soup at the stove, glanced over. "Emma designs things. I build them." Clare raised an eyebrow. "May I see?" After dinner, simple chicken soup and cornbread. Emma spread her graph paper drawings across the table. Each was numbered Design 14 times Winter, threshold. Design 17 times Spring, return asterisk. She explained light flow with the seriousness of a professor. "This one follows you," she said, tapping Design 16. Morning in the kitchen, noon in the main room. Clare leaned in, suggesting an overhang adjustment for afternoon glare. Emma nodded, erasing and redrawing without hesitation. Quietly, Emma asked, "Did you leave my dad?" Clare didn't flinch. "Yes, I was 21 and frightened of staying in one place. I thought the world was something I had to go take." Emma considered that. "He never married anyone else." "I didn't know." She paused. "He found me when I was 4, the same year he finished the river house. He called it a good year." Clare looked at Ethan across the room. He met her gaze steadily. "You can come back tomorrow," Emma said. "I want to show you Design 12. Clare agreed. The next morning, fog lay thick over the back field. Clare walked the path to the river alone. There, on a stone foundation overlooking the bend, stood a small white house with generous windows and a wide porch. Carved into the beam, Emma's river house. Ethan appeared behind her. "Every board I thought of you." Clare touched the carving. "You built the thing you promised me, with her name on it. Someone had to use it," he said. "She was 7 when she pointed to this spot. This is where I'd want to wake up every morning. I didn't know permanent was just a word you liked." They stepped inside. The windows framed the river perfectly. Emma had chosen the glass, he explained, big enough to see the whole sky. Thursday brought Victor Langford, Clare's silver-haired partner, in a black sedan. He offered $580,000 if signed that week, citing investor deadlines. When Ethan questioned the rush, Victor mentioned eminent domain as an alternative. Claire stood in the doorway. "I didn't know he was coming today." Ethan's voice was calm steel. "Maybe, but he's your partner. His actions are yours." Victor left with a warning the offer wouldn't stand. Later, Ethan's father, Thomas, revealed the past. 20 years ago, Claire's father, Robert, and Victor had opposed the relationship. Victor sent an anonymous $25,000 check to Ethan's family 6 weeks after Claire stopped answering calls, returned uncashed. "She didn't leave on her own," Thomas said. "The way she left was Victor and Robert." Claire flew to Boston for an emergency board meeting. Emails proved Victor had shaped the project around the Brooks land for personal leverage, echoing his interference 2 decades earlier. She presented evidence: the old check stub, bank records, manipulated zoning notes. The board voted 6-3 to suspend the project and place Victor on indefinite leave. She won. The land was safe. But victory felt hollow. She sat in her empty office, thinking of carved letters and lost time. 2 days later, a package arrived at Ethan's. Professional drafting tools for Emma, shipped from Claire's office. At dinner, Emma asked, "Will you call her?" Ethan stepped onto the back porch and dialed. "The porch was always yours," he said when she answered. "I didn't know about it. I'm not asking for anything. It's a chair. It's been here." A pause. "Can I come back?" Saturday, breakfast, Emma's designs. Claire arrived with coffee. Thomas approved the roast. Emma worked with her new compass on Design 12, a small house with a porch. "The Wi-Fi is fine if you want to work from here," she told Claire. They revised plans together, adding a half wall for flow. Emma unveiled Design 17, Spring Return *. Claire renamed it after rain *. Breakfast light caught steam from cups. The chair beside Ethan was no longer empty. "A promise is not what you say. It is what you build when no one believes you anymore." The river moved on, unchanging. A robin landed on the railing. The house remained unnamed but shaped, light, river, and a child's pencil drawing.